Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Stadium Journey podcast. Thanks for joining us this evening. Check out the website, stadiumjourney.com. We are the world leader in sports travel information with reviews of over 2,500 stadiums from all around the world. And if my correspondence with one of the writers is to be believed, we may have something coming from the continent of Africa pretty soon. So follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, etc. Find us at Stadium Journey. Like, share, or follow, right? To find other episodes of the Stadium Journey podcast, simply type in HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you look for your favorite podcast. We'll be there too. To view video simulcast of the podcast, just go to our YouTube channel at Stadium Journey. If you want to be part of our studio audience when we record live every other Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, just go to one of Dan Law's social media channels. You'll get directions from there. Right turn at Albuquerque, as Bugs Bunny used to say. Let me take a second before we begin and introduce the gang. Dave Cotney's here. Follow him at CrowFan9. Mark Viquez can be found at Ballpark Hunter. The above-average comedian Dan Calachico's here. Follow him at DanLaw83. Remember how I said go to Dan Law's page and you will find how to find the podcast? There it is, Dan Law 83. I'm Paul Baker. Follow me at PuckmanRI. Now, for those of you who regularly watch the show, back in January, we had a conversation about the launch of the PWHL. We were joined by Melissa and Ryan Burgess. Now that the season is winding down, we're going to put a nice tidy bow on the whole thing. We're joined once again by Melissa to recap this historic inaugural season. For those of you who don't know Melissa, she reports on women's hockey for the Victory Press, writes for the Sabres at Die by the Blade, bless you, whoever that was, and also works in game day ops for the Canisius Golden Griffins. Melissa, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
And thank you once again for joining us on such short notice. This show was put together in a hurry, but it will not reflect.
I think I got all of that. I'm pretty sure I got all of that. I think I got it all of it. Twitter was a big help on me.
When you sent it to me, I was like, that looks like it was pasted right off her LinkedIn profile or something.
No, I actually typed it out. I swear I actually typed it. I didn't lift it. I made sure it sounded professional, so you had to do less work, and apparently it wasn't good enough.
No, it wasn't. It was. I just didn't want to read it with it. I just read stuff for every night.
Oh, yeah.
It's baseball season, so I want to put my own spin on things, which actually I do all the time anyway. They give me copy and I change it. Luckily, I got a bunch of bosses who don't care. But anyway, as we record this, what is it? March. It's May. May 13th. It's baseball season. I don't know if I'm coming or going anymore. And the PWHL playoffs are in full swing. We've got 4 of the 6 teams still playing. 2 of the series, the semifinal series, are at 2-0 right now. So next week the finals will begin. Melissa, overall, there were big expectations for this league in this season. Have they met the expectations? Have they exceeded them? Fallen short? What's your overall opinion of season 1?
I think my first opinion is that I wish the season was longer. And obviously it's just because it was the first season, but it feels like things just got underway and it's already the end of the regular season and we're into playoffs. But I think it's lived up to expectations. I think the games have been incredible. Every game has been competitive. Every team, has had its ups and downs, but it's been great hockey to watch. And, the 2 playoff series, like you said, are going underway now. Gosh. And it'll be really interesting to see who makes it to the final next week.
Yeah, how about that Boston-Montreal game the other night?
Yeah. 3 OT, man. And
how in the world does Jillian Dempsey only play 1 minute 34 seconds in a triple overtime game?
Isn't that that's the question, isn't it? Just their player usage in that game was crazy. Like, how do you not use all of your players in a 3 overtime game?
And who scores the goal? A 4th liner for Boston, right?
Yeah, that was the difference. So.
Okay, so anyway, let's talk a little bit about the season. One of the big things about the PWHL compared to the PHF was that they were shooting big time. They were going to play in large arenas. They were going to use pro quality venues, hopefully attract pro size crowds. And I think that's an area where they've absolutely exceeded expectations. Records were set all over.
Yeah, it seemed like for a little while there was like every week a new record was being set. Like, oh, we broke the Pro Ohio women's hockey attendance record, and then the next week, oh, we broke our own record, and then again they broke their own record. So I think that was great. I think just talking about specific venues, Toronto was playing at Mattamy Athletic Center, which is a very small venue. It was apparent before the season even started that they had outgrown that rink because they sold out of tickets so quickly. So for playoffs, they're now playing at Coca-Cola Coliseum, which is the home of the AHL's Toronto Marlies. Seats something like 8,800, much better size, much bigger crowds, obviously, but also allows more people to get in the door, which is good to help grow that fan base and grow the league. Minnesota has played its games at XL Energy Center. It had big crowds in some of those games. Montreal, we saw them play a game at the Bell Center, sold out. That crowd was just incredible. Toronto played one game at Scotiabank Arena. Scotiabank Arena. Yeah.
Scotiabank Arena.
Yeah.
Yep. Scotiabank.
And that was great. Ottawa played its games at the AHL rink and had consistently good crowds. And New York was kind of the outlier. I didn't mention Boston. Boston had good crowds. The outlier was kind of New York because they bounced around from a couple rinks, which I think will be the goal to not do that next year. But it's been great. It's letting those big crowds in, but also going to those bigger rinks and having the ability to have more people get in the door. Because if it's at Bell Center, wow, well that's cool. Maybe I want to go see that. Like that's gonna be awesome. And just having that space, whereas, Toronto, where you have a much smaller rink at Mattamy, you didn't get a ticket, you're out of luck.
But don't you think that helped? Because they created scarcity for themselves. In Toronto specifically, and Montreal to a lesser extent. So Montreal played in I think it was Verdun, which is somewhere 3,000 to 5,000. As opposed to going from the biggest possible to the smallest, right? Like in Toronto, they created scarcity. So, you started to hear this buzz. Oh wow, this PWHL thing is really taking off. I know my daughter asked about it like kind of halfway through the season. So then we went to look to get tickets. Well, no such luck. So that really. I think that really helped to push the big, huge, Scotiabank success, as opposed to saying, okay, well we're gonna go to Scotiabank, we're gonna be the third tenant or whatever. We're not gonna get Saturday nights or Friday nights or Sunday nights because that's when the Leafs and the Raptors are playing. And they built that anticipation to where they can go to Coca-Cola and play in the playoffs and do really well there too.
Yeah, I think I can see the benefits of both ways. In Minnesota, they have the big rink, and they haven't sold it out. Obviously, I think there's been some games where they didn't even open the 300 level, which makes sense. Obviously, if they don't have to, why would they? So I think it works both ways. You either create that sense of, oh man, I wish I could have gotten a ticket and create that excitement, or you have the open seats and may or may not sell them out. Now, of course, Toronto has been by far the best team this season, so they would have sold them out anyway, probably. But I think Coca-Cola Coliseum, where they're playing the playoffs, I think that's like the perfect size venue for this league right now.
Yeah, those mid-sized venues I think work pretty good. What I was going to ask you, Melissa, is I know like a lot of those records that we talked about early in the season happened. Did that momentum carry on through the season, or was this a case of beginning of the season we saw 10,000 plus every night, and then by the end of the season the crowds had dwindled? Were they able to carry the momentum attendance-wise throughout the year?
I think generally, yeah. Again, I'm taking New York as an outlier because they were.
I want to talk about New York later.
First of all, they were the worst team, and second of all, they bounced around all over the place. But I think by and large, yeah. And I had that concern at the beginning of the season, where there were these first few games with these huge crowds, and I said, okay, that's great, but are these people actually interested, or is it more of just like, oh, it's a novelty, I want to see what this is all about, and then it would dwindle as the season went on. By and large, I don't think that happened. I think, you saw the Bell Center game, the Scotiabank game, those were, mid or late season. Even the last few games in Montreal were, the first one was 9,000 something. The second game was a sellout. Both playoff games for Toronto were sellouts. So I think there has been that sustained engagement with fans. And I think if anything, more eyes have gotten on the league as the season's gone on. So more people have gotten into it. So I think that's great. It was a concern of mine at the beginning, but I think it is truly a sustained fan base now.
And Montreal has also gone to a bigger venue for the playoffs because they're playing in Laval, where
right? Yeah.
Where the Rocket play, and that's like an 8 to 10, so definitely bigger than Verdun, and I would dare say a much nicer venue than Verdun is. Yeah,
I believe they sold over 9,000 tickets for the first playoff game, and they sold out the second playoff game, which was just over 10,000. So, yeah, great to see.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Boston for games 3 and 4 on a Tuesday and a Thursday night. So
yeah,
some of these attendance figures have been really exciting because, like Dave said, these teams are not the number 1 tenant, or sometimes not even the number 2 tenant in their buildings. So they're getting scraps as far as scheduling. So that can also affect attendance. Let's talk about New York. They started the season with the majority of their schedule planned for Bridgeport. And anyone who's ever been to Bridgeport for the Sound Tigers, or now the Islanders, can attest that they don't draw for any kind of hockey game. So the fact that they were lagging 5,000 fans behind all the other teams.
You're barely in the New York City market.
Exactly, but it looked like as the season went on, they kind of figured out Bridgeport wasn't the place to be, and it looks like they moved.
Told them at the beginning
to Jersey for most of their games. Am I right there, or did I misread something?
Yeah. So to start the season, they bounced around. So they did play in Bridgeport. They had a few games at UBS Arena, which drew better than Bridgeport. But yeah, clearly it became evident very quickly that Bridgeport was not going to be good for them. And like you said, it's not the team. It's even the AHL team there doesn't draw. So clearly that was not going to be the solution, and they needed to find something better. Towards the end of the season, they moved over to New Jersey, which was, I think, a great choice. I would have liked to see that happen earlier in the season, honestly, but I understand logistically why it couldn't happen earlier in the season. But I think that was a good choice for them. But it's tough, it's tough to have a team that bounces around from place to place in general, but also that doesn't help to grow the fan base, right? Because if I want to be like a full-time fan, I'm not going to go from here and then go to this arena and then go to that arena. Like, I just want to have one arena where my team plays and that's it. And so while it could be good to, expose these different groups and say, oh, well, now we're playing in Jersey and that's a different crowd maybe than who would have came to Bridgeport. You don't have that consistency of, well, now I'm a fan who I was traveling to Bridgeport, and now I got to travel to Jersey. So definitely something I think they're going to, I wouldn't be surprised to see them spend all next season in Jersey, because I think that seemed to work out well for them.
And Mark, nobody from Jersey is driving to Connecticut anyway, right?
I didn't drive there when I lived there.
No. I mean, I'm just thinking Bridgeport, for where I grew up, was a good 2-hour drive. With traffic or without. No, nobody's driving the tolls, the bridges. You might as well just call yourself Connecticut if you're going to play in Bridgeport or Bridgeport. Yeah, it was a bad decision, and I think it was done because they didn't have another building to go to at the time. Arenas are expensive to rent in the New York, New Jersey market, and you don't really have a decent mid-sized one. Maybe Long Island, but the old Nassau Coliseum, but even that's kind of pricey. You're not going to go to Trenton. Yeah, that'd be.
I mean, why everybody else tries?
Everybody goes there and dies.
I mean,
hockey team's an indoor football team.
I was going to say the soul didn't even get off. Anyway, that's a whole other.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the only problem I had with this season. Take this right. We discussed it with you and Ryan, Melissa, the end of the PHF, or what was the NWHL, and what a bummer that all was for a long time. And I don't want to say I got over it, but I found myself very quickly getting heavily invested into this and not thinking so much about it. And one of the things that impressed me was not only the audience numbers, which were, as we just discussed, more or less contained with everybody, kept up with everybody, but the level. I watched a lot more PWHL games this year when they were on against the NHL than NHL games.
Excuse me, Dan. While you're telling this story, I'm just going to drink my Boston Pride beer here. Okay?
There you go. I still hope some of those names come back. I found it very interesting how quickly and how competitive that league became, and how better it looked on TV. And it hurt, and it still hurts my feelings saying that. The product was incredible to watch, and I think that's why it's working. Just at a basic level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what women's hockey always needed or always wanted, was the best on the best. But I think it also goes beyond what was on the rink, right? It's like the production, which I don't know if that's what you were alluding to or not, but
absolutely,
the production value of the broadcast was significantly better than what we used to see in the PHF, and that investment makes a difference, right? I mean, I think having the games on YouTube was a great idea because it makes it so much more accessible for people. So I'm in Buffalo. Obviously, I don't have a PWHL team here in my hometown, but even I got to watch some games on TV because I do get CBC Canada here, so I saw a few Toronto games and a few of the New York games were even on our MSG, which I was amazed at because I'm like, I'm not in the New York area, so I didn't expect our MSG to cover them. But just, the production value of those broadcasts was great. The hockey was great, which we knew. But to see all those resources for the broadcast was fantastic, but also it was a little like, well, why couldn't PHF have this?
You're right. The exposure was fantastic because not only could I watch the Boston games here, but we got all the out-of-market games too. I got to watch all the teams on multiple occasions, so that's something that was very different. I think, like you said, really, really great for the league. And yeah, the games looked fantastic. Both the quality of play on the ice and the production. No offense to anyone who worked for the PHF.
It was really bittersweet because at the other side was this again, we talked about it, and I still feel this way, was this league with history. For better or for worse, I thought for better, because without them, we would not be here right now. A hell of a history. And I think it didn't really hit me until listening to some of the broadcasts where they used the term a lot, first ever, and I'm like, no. I tweeted it once and tagged, a few people, not in a jerk way, but I was like, guys, you can't, why are we ignoring? And I just was like, you know what, I don't want to be that dude, but I was like, we're not going to ignore the 7, 8 years? How much?
8.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when it started bothering me, I think, and I was like, you don't have to do that when this is pumping so well. You could just acknowledge it.
And the PWHL before it.
Right. That seemed to be more of a marketing kind of push because I saw a few interviews with people who were involved and they like, no, stop, this is not the first ever. There have been trailblazers before the PWHL. So that I thought that was good to hear when some people were interviewed. But yeah, it seemed like at times like it was, okay, well, since Billie Jean King put her name on it. It must be the first time ever.
It just comes off as very disingenuous to me.
And Dave still makes that joke to me. You're going to go yell at Billie Jean King again?
She gonna whoop my ass if I ever. No.
She's 90 years old now. She's not going to whoop my ass.
It doesn't matter.
Do you think, in hindsight, do you think she was necessary?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it never hurts to have a good face to the league, to the organization, to the creation of the new thing, especially since it's new. I mean, she has been, she hasn't really been involved. I mean, she's been at some of the games and everything, but I don't think she's really in on the hands-on, day-to-day product of the league. But I think it helps, it helps having that big name because everybody knows who Billie Jean King is. Everybody knows her legacy, and to attach the league to her kind of gives it that, well, it's legit, like, because we're attached to Billie Jean King, and she is women's sports history, and we're making women's sports history, or, they want to say so. So I think it's fine. I think she's been a big help along the way. And I don't know. I mean, I think it still would have been a success without her because look at some of the other big names you've got in the league, that the players that make the league, right?
I don't think, when half your teams are in Canada, I don't think Billie Jean King pushed the envelope up here.
Right.
To be honest. People know who Billie Jean King is, but I don't think she has the cachet north of the border that she does down there. Actually, I wanted to ask about the TV numbers. So,
Dave, one split second. Before you move on.
Yeah.
I want to air quotes again so she doesn't kill me. Use Billie Jean King for one thing going forward. I want a team in Philadelphia. Please. Thank you. And back to you, Dave.
He doesn't even live in Philadelphia.
I will not. I don't. There's a team. If there's a team in DC, I will not fold.
Be patient.
No. No.
Anyway, I wanted to ask about the TV numbers or the viewership numbers. So I know up here it was a really huge deal when they ran their New Year's Day game. I think it was New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve, but I think it was New Year's Day. And they got 2.9 million Canadian viewers. I kind of get the feeling now that they're a little bit lost in the shuffle with the NHL playoffs going on and the NBA playoffs going on, and then of course all your local hockey leagues that are wrapping up. And we had regular games on TSN, at least one a week. All the games were available on TSN Plus. So were the TV numbers or the viewership numbers solid in the States, or up here, or how does the TV side look going forward, or do we even know?
So I don't know specific TV numbers, and I think TV is tough because there was TV, obviously, like in the markets, but then most people who weren't in those markets were watching on YouTube. I know the league has over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Every time I watched the majority of games on YouTube because there were only those few that were on my TV here in Buffalo. Every time I watched a game on YouTube, there were, good crowds. You can see here, there's people waiting to watch a game right now because the game starts at 8 o'clock. But it's not just the people who were viewing, and that was one of the things
working together to deliver more great
that I like about the YouTube is you get
if those guys are on our feed, they need to pay us.
This podcast brought to you by what was that?
Yeah, what was that? Guy in the soft drink aisle.
That was an amalgamation of all the soda companies saying it's good.
But anyways, I think one of the underrated parts of the YouTube broadcast is that you get that chat, which, is really nice because you get people who are able to talk to each other and fans who are able to feed off each other or ask questions if they're not sure about something or, they don't know which team they should root for. And obviously on TV, you don't get that. But I think that even when the PHF/NWHL, they used to broadcast on Twitch, and it was that same thing. The chat was a big part of it and a big part of that community feeling that you get in women's hockey.
Yeah, it was like an extension from when the NWHL started on Twitch. We had these polls popping up in the chat, and I noticed at first that I saw a lot of recognizable names from the early Twitch days. So
what
that
are
is
spicy playoffs?
They don't care who wins; they just want to see awesome game.
Yep.
Oh. Can YouTube provide the revenue necessary in the long run, or is this going to be is this going to be viewed as kind of maybe a loss leader? Like, we're not really making anything on this now, but going forward, we hope we get followers so that we can do our own thing where we can make money.
I mean, I think the goal going forward would be to get a national TV deal. That just makes sense. I think this year things just came together so quickly with the start of the season that there just really wasn't time for that kind of thing. I would love to see a few games on ESPN in the U.S. just because, half your markets are in the U.S. Because I think YouTube is great. It's a great option. It's very accessible. Obviously, it's free. You don't need a cable subscription or anything, which is a big draw for people, especially nowadays. So many people are cutting cable and everything. But I think the goal would be to get, TV deals, obviously, because that's where the money is. I don't think there's big money in YouTube, unfortunately.
Okay, I guess I'll go then. So we talked about TV, we've talked about buildings. What, Melissa, in your opinion, and actually everybody on the panel, what have been the biggest successes for this league in year one? And by the same token, what have been some of the things that they need to really improve on?
Good question. Does anyone else want to go first?
New York staying in place. Start there. I know it's the simple one, but even the Philly boy who has no connection to Philly anymore, apparently.
I didn't say that. I said
it was implied, Dave. No, I'm kidding. No, I think
keep your private issues private.
No, I would like the Northeast market to figure it out. It was, and if you remember, it was I hate, that's fine. I'm adding air quotes. I don't want to offend anybody. It was a problem with New York, the Metros. It was a problem. The Riveters, excuse me. They were called the Metro Riveters. Sorry, I mixed up. I think they were New York, New Jersey, and then the Metropolitan Riveters. I don't think I have the order right, but there was a little bit of a disconnect because they're like, well, who's that for? For me? You? And I I want to see expansion, but see, I don't know anymore because they waited a little bit for the PHF. So do we do the opposite, and jump right into it? I know, the selfish part of me wants not to wait any longer. More so, I don't want the money for it. I just want them to use my idea. It's a very serious one, but I want them to use it because I think that's a great one. Philadelphia Electric. Give me. It made designs and everything.
I think the successes are pretty obvious. They've been able to be on some big time TV. They've drawn big numbers while being on big time TV. They've been in big buildings and drawn big numbers at times. I think I think they've done it in spite of, not having the ancillary stuff to market, not having, uniforms that are great, not having team names, and I honestly, I'm a little surprised by that. However, that's another thing to kind of look forward to. I think they do have to be cautious of like the sophomore jinx, right? Like it was new and shiny, and it's already first year's happened. Second year, well, we've been there, done that. We'll go back to it, or yeah, we might get around to it. So to keep that momentum, I think is going to be huge. Regardless of Philly or not, I think expansion would be a mistake at this point in time. I think they need to be on really, really solid ground. And not to say that they're not on solid ground, I just don't think that 1 year is enough to really feel that they have that base.
I would agree with you there, Dave, because this season, like it's been said before here, this season was rushed. This season was put together in a hurry. So take a full off season now, get your ducks in a row, and improve on season one before you start looking to add teams. I think what's going to push more teams coming in more than anything else is the amount of quality players that are waiting to play and are wanting to play in this league. So that may push, in my eyes, might push expansion quicker than the league perhaps may want it to happen.
I was going to say, as I was saying it, guys, as I was saying it, I was like, well, I think year two, maybe that, what Melissa and Dave mentioned was getting that TV audience in the U.S. Sorted out first. So maybe next year, maybe not so much on YouTube. Maybe they can finally sell this because you got a heck of a production team. Hey, here's a highlight package. Can you air us, please? Putting it on some networks in the States. Then base that on ratings and where to put who. So yeah, I will also double what Dave said. Again, comparing the first episode we did with this one, we were all kind of thumbing our nose at city name. Who cares? It shut me up because I saw those jerseys everywhere in those crowds.
Yeah, so, I gotta tell you, Dan, having gone to a game, there were jerseys everywhere. They were flying.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I do this and I don't market. To be frank, but no. But I was it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm glad I'm wrong because if we were right, that would have been really bad. Instead, most of the crowds looked like they were color coordinated and like the league had been there for years, and there was a solid, coordination going on, like going to Citizens Bank Park, or going to Boston or TD Garden or whatever. So I'm happier than a pig in mud on that one. I'm good. So I think, TV deal, then maybe some growth and logos.
Yeah, and I think all that will come, but I think it's more important to get it right than to rush it, right? And that's the thing. Like this whole season, as you said, was not rushed, but it was put together in a hurry. And a team name is something that you want to last. You don't want to have it for one season and then go, we don't like that, or the fans didn't really respond to that. You want to work with something. You want to really put thought into it, and maybe even get player input, get the fan base input. Once those people are engaged. So I think you don't have to rush it. Obviously, we've seen that this season. I said from the beginning, those jerseys were not perfect. I don't love just having the city name on it, but in the end, I'm not watching for the jersey, right? I'm watching for the players. I'm watching for the hockey. In the end, I'm not rooting for the Toronto XYZ whatever. I'm just rooting for that team, right? As if I'm a fan, like I don't care what the team name is. At the end of the day, I'm rooting for the players on the ice, and that's who I want to win. Whatever I call them, whatever, fine. So I think this is good because it's given them some time to start workshopping names. We saw some names come up through the trademark search, and we saw how fans responded to those. And it did not work out well. So that's, your prime example of don't rush. Get it right instead of getting it fast. And same thing with logos.
Or did it work out perfectly and they're like, okay, well, not those.
Yeah. It was a perfect focus group, unintentional or intentional. It worked out great.
Yeah.
And talking about expansion, I think I have the same thoughts as a lot of you guys. I know expansion will come. I don't think it will come this coming season. I think it would be good for the league to get one full season under its belt. Because don't forget, this wasn't a full season. Get that full season under its belt. Figure out all the kinks along the way. Then bring in expansion. I mean, expansion is inevitable. It's not just where those teams will do well, but it's also where you have the interest. We know that Pittsburgh is interested in bringing a women's hockey team there. The Penguins have spoken about, a rink at the Cranberry complex. That would be, again, like the perfect size probably for a women's hockey team. So you already know, like, you've got some of these markets that clearly are willing, but you just want to make sure your product is as good as it can possibly be before you start expanding. You don't want to expand too fast. But, like you also said, at the same time, you got to balance that because there are a ton of college hockey players who are graduating who are going to be looking to play pro. Some of them are going to have to go overseas. Some of them are not going to find a pro spot. Some of them are going to end up maybe on PWHL teams, and others are going to end up in reserve spots. You've got players like Andrea Brownlee, who's come over from overseas, who has declared for the PWHL draft. Clara Peslarova. Like, obviously, goalies are a special thing because there's even fewer spots for them. But I think that is part of it. You do want to have places for these players to play because there are going to be so many more of them, and there are only so many spots. But it's got to be measured growth, right? It's got to be. You can't just expand just because there are all these players. We have to do it at the right time with the right backing, with the right people in place in the cities that we're going to go to. And I think, Pittsburgh makes sense. I think something like Calgary or Western Canada would make sense to kind of make sure Minnesota's not the only one hanging out there out west. And I think it will come, but you want to make sure it's sustainable.
Western Canada brings a whole host of travel issues that they just don't have now with a league that's essentially an East Coast league. And I think to go west, they really have to make sure that not only would the new markets be good markets, that their existing teams are on really solid ground, all of them.
Would it not kill the existing teams, right?
Yeah, you don't want to put an existing team into a spot where, like, they are not going to be able to make it because they can't make that, because they have to make these long road trips that they weren't making before.
Right. I think it's all part of a bigger conversation, which has just come up in the last few days, and is also obviously a hot topic in the WNBA right now. Charter flights. That's a whole thing. If you can get this in place where you have charter flights for your team, then expansion out west makes a lot more sense or is a lot easier. We just saw this for anyone who doesn't know. Minnesota is playing Toronto in the PWHL playoffs. Toronto picked its opponent because they were the first place team.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Which is great. The standings came down to the last day of the season, so we really didn't know which of the teams they would be able to pick from. So once they made their choice and announced it, Minnesota pretty much had to get on a plane like 12 hours later. Players, talked about having to scramble to find dog sitters and babysitters and things like that. I know that there were delays, I think, in Chicago for their flights. They couldn't even all get on one plane. Like, players had to get on one plane, and then coaches came with the equipment later, so then they didn't even get a skate before their first game in Toronto. So the whole thing that would have been not a problem if they had a charter flight, which I believe, so I have not actually confirmed this, but I believe that the league did pony up for charter flights for Toronto and Minnesota to get from Toronto to Minnesota now after that whole debacle. So that is good, but But, that's just another example of something I think you would want to have that in place before you start working on expansion out west, where there's going to be those flights, and that's going to be a necessity.
Well, look what the American Hockey League did, which is, maybe not entirely comparable, but fairly comparable. They went to essentially two separate leagues, right? Where, they're all American Hockey League, but the West teams don't play anybody in the East, and the East teams don't play anybody in the West. Right. And they physically moved a whole bunch of teams so that they could keep the West alive.
Yeah. So I think it's something to consider, and I think, like I said, expansion is coming, but you just want to make sure that everything else is in place first. And I know that the initial question was, what were the successes and failures of the league? I think we've kind of talked about it, but I think one of the underrated successes for me, as someone who's been covering women's hockey for 9 years, which is insane to me that it's been 9 years, is that you're starting to get, I think, more recognition of some of the players besides the Natalie Spooner, besides the Hillary Knight, among the crowd. People are starting to, be able to get to recognize more of these players because they get to watch them on a consistent basis and not just at the Olympics, at World Championships, which are not accessible on mainstream TV in the United States anyway. But, like Kristen Campbell, Toronto's goaltender, she is, I'm not going to say the word, but she has not been scored on this playoff. And how many people would have known her before this season? Some would, obviously. The dedicated, the long-term women's hockey fans would know her. But I think she's become more of a name because people have been able to watch her consistently. So I think that's been one of the successes of the league, is just that exposure of getting players out there. And I think even like a player like, I'm going to shout out a former Buffalo Beaut, Michaela Grant-Mentis. She's, super popular on social media. Like women's hockey fans are big supporters of her. She bounced around a bit. She was not well used in her first PWHL team. She went to her second team. She's scored several goals there. People are getting to know her more. Carly Jackson in Toronto has not played a single minute of ice time. But a lot of people know who Carly Jackson is because they've become a presence on social media, on the PWHL broadcast, and the names are getting out there. And I think that's a big success. But also, speaking of the Buffalo Beauts, I just have to show this off. It's an Isabel Cup ring.
That doesn't intimidate me, Melissa. I've got two.
Oh, come on, Baker, pull it out.
It's upstairs. It's upstairs. But it looks like this.
You have the beer, but you have the beer. That's cool.
It looks like this.
That's cool.
You are ill prepared for this show, Baker.
Actually, we started recording. I was like, damn it, I left my ring upstairs.
And Melissa waited till the last hour to be like, bang,
bang.
All right, so a lot has gone right in his first season for the PWHL. What are some things that need some improvement?
You can't mention one.
Well, I think we covered the jerseys and logos. It kind of boggles my mind how well they did with them.
I couldn't believe, Dave. I couldn't believe when I went to a game how those jerseys were selling. Because we all made fun of it. Like, this says New York in diagonal letters, and this
like
is just
it's like beer league jerseys, right?
But oh my God, they're everywhere.
I just want to point out, reported by Melissa at one point, that Bauer is an official sponsor of PWHL and will be unveiling the new jerseys ahead of the next season.
No Fanatics?
Yes. So I do expect them to be nice and sharp for next season.
No, they're going to look better than the Fanatics jersey.
So no Fanatics. Well, I guess I have a question. With the success in the WNBA heading into their season, any runoff you see coming off to your league, another female professional league?
I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap in the fans, right? It's women's sports, so I think there's a lot of people who support one who support the other. But I think there's also that, like the talk about the WNBA and the charter flights, and then we bring that into the PWHL and say, well, the WNBA is doing this now. So, but also we have to recognize that the WNBA has been around for many more years, and
but maybe there's a blueprint there to follow.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I saw, I think the Indiana Fever were on a charter flight, and they had all the girls celebrating.
Yeah.
Back to our charter
Yeah, until this year, Mark, the WNBA did not have charter flights. They
No.
did commercially.
When I used to work for Hatworld at the airport, we used to get a lot of the WNBA teams to come in, and we would have conversations with them. They would be boarding a plane just like me and you. Yeah. So that was about 20 years ago. So yeah, times are changed, and you like to see that. You know, with the WNBA, we're seeing some of the games being pushed to larger arenas. And I guess you mentioned that some of that happened this year in your league, so that's great news to hear.
Yeah. I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? And especially after a first year that hasn't even been a full season, there's always going to be things to be worked out. The jerseys, the team names, the logos. But they didn't want to wait, a full calendar year of just having all these players be stagnant to start things up. So
I think that makes everything that's going on this year even more impressive because this, like you said, this league maybe rush might not be the right word. I don't know. I think it was very rushed, but it was put together in a hurry, and for it to be as runs as smoothly and as successfully as it did, I mean that's a kudos to everybody involved, and just bodes well for having a full summer to plan and to market and to sell tickets and to sell sponsorships and to work out deals. I think the sky is the limit.
Here's a thought coming off of Mark's idea on the WNBA popularity. I think it's fair to say that the increase in popularity in the WNBA is a direct result of the drastic increase in popularity in women's college basketball, and not the other way around. I also think that women's college basketball increased in popularity because men's college basketball fell off, like, significantly. Because one and dones made it way more difficult for the average fan to kind of follow. And you had Caitlin Clark play at Iowa for 4 years or whatever, and you had Angel Reese play at LSU for a couple of years. So, to me, the men's college game kind of opened the door and allowed for the women's game to become more popular. Not to say that that the women's game wasn't good, but I think that the door kind of opened there. Is there an opportunity for women's hockey to gain popularity because of some way that like the men's game is falling off? Like, I'm thinking maybe inaccessibility because the prices are so high to go to an NHL game or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I don't know that the NHL is falling off. I mean, maybe it is. It kind of is in some ways, for sure. But I think it's the innovation and the creativity that draws people to the women's game a lot of the time. I think now is a good time for women's sports in general. Like, at large, women's sports are probably more popular than they've ever been. But I also think, like, speaking specifically about the PWHL, like you said, NHL games are very expensive. PWHL games, much more affordable. NHL games, you probably have to have either cable or Hulu or ESPN Plus or whatever to watch them. PWHL games, you just need an internet connection. You can watch them on YouTube. So I think that, that innovation, and then the PWHL has some fun and different rules and scenarios this season, like the jailbreak goal, where if a shorthanded team scores while they're shorthanded, the player is released from the penalty box. A lot of people have loved that rule, and they, get such a kick out of it. And there's been a few jailbreak goals this season. And, I know people are always like, well, I wish the NHL would do that. So I think it's, those innovative ways that they've found to do things just, similarly in most ways to the NHL or college hockey or whatever. But just those little things that make it different, that make it unique, that draw people, I think.
Like the ABA back in the day with the 3-point line and the red, white, and blue ball. Here's a question. If you were shorthanded 2 players and you scored a shorty, would both players get out?
Just one.
Oh.
Just it would be the first one, obviously.
Oh, you heard the disappointed my voice there.
But if you get a shorthanded goal and you're down 2, you get 2 points.
That's a good compromise.
Just
I was driving around today a little bit, and on the Toronto Sports Radio station, one of the guys was talking about his experience going to the one of the Toronto playoff games. Complained about getting in, and that the facility wasn't great in that sense. But when he got in, he said it was fantastic. And one of the things he talked about actually was how the operations was targeting young girls more than, any other pro game or anything like that. So said there was the music selection, play a Taylor Swift song, which, if you did that at an NHL game or an AHL game or whatever, that might be kind of passé. But they play the Taylor Swift song, and then there's like thousands of girls just rocking out to Taylor Swift songs and joining in. I know when we watched the Montreal Boston game, I don't know if you caught this, but they ran out of music first of all because they started replaying it in the overtime. But when they played the Carly Rae Jepsen song, like it was audible on television, you could hear the whole crowd singing. It was pretty neat. So I think that's probably been a bit of a success as well, in that they have kind of targeted in-game operations towards girls as opposed to just your typical AC/DC, Metallica, typical stuff that you would hear at an NHL game.
Yeah, it's definitely about knowing your fan base, right? And knowing what people who are in the audience actually like and want to hear. No offense to AC/DC or Metallica or any of those other bands.
As a 55 plus white male, I will not be offensive. That's a shock. That's a crock. Let's talk about something. When we did the preseason episode, we were very critical about the perceived bias that we saw towards the national team members. One thing that I've been hearing about going forward is that it's going to be tough for a lot of the mid-level players who sign these 1-year contracts to keep their spot in the league, because you've got 3 players on every team who are tied in. What did they call the first 3 players? They didn't call them territorial picks, but whatever they call them. They have 3-year guaranteed contracts. And you've got this, like you mentioned, Melissa, this wealth of college talent coming up who are going to take spots. And everyone who remains in the league is guaranteed a certain percentage of a raise. Well, what's going to happen to that middle class of the league right now? It looks like they're going to get priced out. So that involves a lot, I think, of the old PHF players, I think. So are there going to be a lot of one and dones in this league, player wise?
Yeah, I think that'll be the tough thing, right? I mean, that's part of why you want to see expansion, obviously, is because there are too many players and not enough spots. Even going into this season, there are so many players who could have made it but just didn't, or who almost made it and then were one of the final cuts. And yeah, I think with the salary cap and everything, it will be interesting to see how teams do that. I've heard that some of the deals as they were announced at the beginning of the season have since been restructured. So there's players who, we maybe thought were on a one-year deal who are actually on a 2-year deal. I, haven't been able to confirm any of that yet. Haven't really looked into it too much, but it is going to be interesting to see how many of these college players get in as a full-time spot, and how many players are displaced as a result. And I think some of those players will end up going overseas, unfortunately.
What other differences are we going to? I mean, season 1's not over yet. I know we're just talking about season 2, but the timing of the episode just dictates it. That's what we've got to do today. What changes are we going to see in season 2 for the PWHL?
Well, I can guarantee you one, because we already know that we're going to see a new coach behind the New York bench. That was announced over the last few days, that Howie Draper has mutually agreed that he's going to return to his college coaching career, which I think is great for him, great for the team. Like, he was, I think, with the University of Alberta for 24 or 26 seasons before coming to the PWHL. It did not work out for one reason or another, so we're definitely going to see a new coach there, and I would love to see Colton Orr as a former PHF NWHL head coach. I would love to see him and get a shot there. Otherwise, I think for the first full season, I think it's just going to be interesting to see how many, how the games are spread out more. There's going to be more games, obviously. But I also think that the other thing that I'll be interested to see next season will be how, well, not necessarily next season, but just going forward, how the IIHF works with the PWHL in terms of scheduling worlds and things like that, because I know that there's been discussions, preliminary, very early discussions between those organizations about how the PWHL season and the World Championship schedule will kind of go together, because this year it was kind of just in the middle of the season, and that's just the way that it happened. But I think next season we're going to have jerseys, we're going to have team names, hopefully with logos, and teams will really be able to build, even more of a fan base on top of that, because you have it's much maybe more fun to say, instead of saying let's go Toronto, let's go XYZ team name. And I think we'll see Toronto. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved to Coca-Cola Coliseum full time. But at the same time, that will make it interesting in terms of scheduling, because they will have to schedule with the Marlies, who, the Marlies play a lot of weekend games. And just so I bring this up now, so that in 2 years from now, when it happened, I can say I brought it up. The WNBA is now coming to Toronto. And the report there is that they will also play at Coca-Cola Coliseum. So, PWHL, if they go there next season, they're going to be in there 1 year before the WNBA team comes in. But that's just another team that's going to call that venue home, that they're going to have to schedule alongside and not conflict with and everything. So, overall, great time for women's sports, and can't wait to see what happens next in the Walter Cup playoffs and next week at the championship.
Your pick for the Walter Cup, the first champion?
Toronto.
They've got to be considered a heavy favorite, but it's funny.
Shouldn't be too much of a schedule conflict, because they, plays mostly in the summer.
Right.
Where, WNBA is just starting up, and the PWHL is just finishing.
Right.
Good point.
Maybe some of the Toronto fans can jump on that bandwagon and hang on, since Maple Leafs thing didn't work out again.
I know during the All-Star break, I tweeted that I just can't get into the PWHL because my connection with the Pride, and B, because the Boston team stinks. But since I tweeted that, I think they've gone like 8-1 or something like that, and they're just the hottest team in the league. So yeah, go Boston.
They took that personally.
I'm sure that they were all paying attention to me.
That son of a bitch said what?
Hey, you know what? It was great to walk into Sonja Center on the first game of the season and have somebody yell, "Hey, Paul!" and it was one of the players.
I saw the perfect comic the other day from, I don't remember what it was, the Toronto Star or what it was, but it was a guy throwing his Leafs jersey in the garbage. Next panel, guy throwing his Blue Jays jersey in the garbage. Third panel, guy putting a Toronto PWHL jersey on, saying, "Yep, women's hockey will do it for me," or something like that.
I thought it might be that Homer Simpson when he disappears into the bush. Comes back out.
A similar vein, yeah.
Okay, well now I'm pulling for them to win, because I just want to see that happen.
What, Toronto fans jump on the bandwagon?
Yeah, then maybe Steve Dangle can do a video about them.
He can rest in peace. Right?
Yeah, you can be quiet now, Steve. have a championship. What?
All right, I think that just about does it. Mark, Dave, you have any predictions for the Walter Cup finals? I know you guys have been watching the league so very closely.
I say Toronto. First place.
Sure, I'm going to go with Toronto just so that if you guys are all right, I'm right.
All right, so I'm
I heard
contrarian.
Dave said Boston.
No, see, I don't. You know why I don't like Boston? First of all, my daughter doesn't like Boston because she's decided she likes Montreal. Secondly, Boston looks weird in green on the ice.
The Celtics just make no sense.
No, they should have the black and yellow of the Bruins on the ice.
See, I at first I was kind of upset over the color choices, but as I've watched the league, I think going opposite of all the men's team colors has been genius. Give them their own identities, their own color schemes. Some are closer than others, but all the teams have a unique color scheme for themselves.
Yeah, and who says you have to have the same color scheme as the rest of the city? I know Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh does.
Champions that, but like their USFL team switched for 1 year before they folded.
Boston would be better off with like red or something like that, but to go with Celtic colors, nah, I don't like it.
I didn't like it until I saw it in person, so I'll respectfully disagree with you there.
Melissa, if you can get a note to the Boston team to let them know Dave doesn't like it.
Dude, how many Irish people are in Boston?
Only watching.
There's green everywhere in this damn city.
I was gonna say, I'm like, it's a different green.
As long as they don't call the team the Wicked, I'll be all right.
No, I believe that was on the list that we all said pretty much was I think that was on purpose.
My line was actually, if they do call them the Wicked, I will have to root for somebody else.
Understood.
So, Melissa, once again, thanks for joining us, especially on such short notice. Before we sign off, do you want to take a minute to promote yourself and your ventures and your social media presence?
Of course. So I'm currently covering women's hockey at the Victory Press. So it's victorypress.org. I also write about the Sabres and the NHL at Die by the Blade, but you can also find my recent bylines on MSNBC, which I will hopefully have something coming there about women's hockey. I've also done some TV appearances lately on CBC, so you can watch those every once in a while. And I'm on Twitter at _Melissa Burgess, so follow me, and I'm pretty much always talking about hockey one way or another, so that's a good thing.
And if you're always talking about hockey, you're a friend of most of us.
Yeah.
And in the It's a Small World department, my season just started up with the New England Knockouts, the new baseball team, the Frontier League, and one of the full-time employees, the marketing director, went to Canisius, and I'm like, I know somebody who works for Canisius. And I mentioned Ryan. And he's like, you know Berg?
That's crazy.
We'll post it on our podcast.
That's hilarious. What is the person's name?
Katie McMahon.
Okay, yeah. Cool. It is. It's a small world, you know. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, so.
I used to not know anybody. Now I know too many people. Oh, well, Melissa, thanks again. And Dan, you said you had something you wanted to bring up before we.
Well, yeah, I was gonna let Melissa go unless you comment on a baseball jersey.
I'm good. I don't know much about baseball jerseys. So.
Thank you, Melissa, for
we
coming
had a
on
whole
again.
episode dedicated to how crappy the new jerseys are. So.
Well, we're gonna add to that in just a second. Melissa, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being so kind with the 24-hour notice.
Of course, anytime, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. Have a good night. Tell Ryan I said hello.
All right.
Good night. Okay, everyone. So this just got leaked a couple hours ago, and I wanted to share it live with you all.
I knew it was gonna be a City Connect jersey.
And I wanted to just bring it to everyone's attention because it's the Los Angeles Dodgers, it's the LA Dodgers City Connect.
It's our old friend Chris Kramer. We got to get him back on the podcast.
Yes, it's our old friend Chris Kramer, Sports Logos.
These jerseys are just meant to be very kind of in your face and different. And
Remember when the NHL did those weird jerseys in the 90s?
Like the NHL did that, you know.
Yeah, the Kings Burger King jersey and the
Kings,
Mighty Ducks with the Wild Wings.
And, you know, like Cleveland introduced their jerseys today, and there's some elements I like, but it's like these big giant letters. Everybody has, you know, the abbreviation of the city on their jerseys now.
Yeah, and was that like funfetti on the jersey there?
Yeah, I'll go back to that in a second, but I was going to show.
Like
I was
Cleveland, but
showing the Cleveland one while he was talking about it.
CLE looks silly. Everything else I like. They could have came up with They could have put Indians on it.
I don't think they can do that now.
A lot of people would like that.
A lot of people still live in the 50s.
Put Chief Wahoo back on there, right?
Hold on, yeah, just put giant.
But put the original one. That's the most like offensive.
Yeah.
But like go all the way back. I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Or they could have put CLE with feathers like the Washington football team.
There you go.
Our Southern California buddy Dre Ojeda did not give these New Jerseys the seal of approval.
I don't think anybody.
I think he said something about his 5-year-old niece being able to do something like this.
Let's be honest. A lot of these city connects are pretty bad.
But what is the point of the jimmies?
The hundreds and thousands?
Confetti? I don't know.
The sprinkles, yeah.
So
the jimmies. That's all Caputo talk.
I'm not a marketing guy or whatever, but every line, every dot having to have some sort of significance.
Yeah.
I'm kind of over that. That's silly.
So what do the dots mean, Dave?
Who cares?
Oh yeah, this is just the dots represent the dots that were on the road that was first paved in 1947. There's 37. There's horrible to Detroit.
Yeah, there's 37 dots to signify the 37 people who were in the academy.
Oh, that's Detroit.
Or Los Angeles would be like, there's 1,008 dots to represent each person who was displaced by the building of Dr.
Yeah,
Stadium.
there you go. That'd be good. Like you can make it full city connector, but I feel like people let's just make this very loud and horrible. Like
you mean like the yellow Boston ones?
The yellow Boston ones are horrible.
They're stupid.
And you know how many of those you see around Fenway Park now? It's crazy.
But then they sell, so maybe there's a younger generation that likes
this one was good.
Yeah,
I like their hat. The hat was incredible.
I think they got
like
the hat.
that logo, the Ray logo.
Yeah, that's on the hat.
Yeah.
And then the Yankees are like, well, we're not going to do it because you're traditionalists. You guys got a sponsorship on your sleeve. F you. Tell me.
First of all, Yankees, you can't do anything because you've had one boring ass jersey for 4,000 years. So nobody cares. Shut up.
Lots of people care. I think you're way off on that one. Well, no,
nobody outside of New York cares. Is what I'm saying.
I think lots of people outside of New York.
They're a national team. They're a national.
Well, before Dan throws it in my face, I like expecting that the Toronto Blue Jays City Connect jerseys are going to be as horrible, if not more horrible, than every other.
Maybe I didn't know they were. Why would I throw that in your face? I think it sucks that you have a jersey.
They're going to be bad, and it's Toronto.
I'll tell you something. I like the hat.
Yeah, no, that's a great hat.
Is that a Liberty Bell on it?
Yeah, it's Liberty Bell with the silhouette of the city on the pier.
Oh, that's nice. I like
that. It's got Comcast building, and it's got the pen on.
Oh yeah, I like that.
So
that's great.
Here's where the City Connects lose me. It's the colors.
Yeah, the colors. That also the numbers you care.
You've got it. To me, Philly colors are Philly colors.
Yeah.
Right? Blue Jay colors are Blue Jay. Can you imagine I know Blue Jays do a Canada Day jersey that's red. But they've done that for a long time.
But that's more or less a reverse
jersey. That's a one-off.
Yeah, that's
they haul that out once a year.
I think that's a fine.
No, you gotta stick with your team colors. The MLS is even worse. I mean, they had that whole set of jerseys where every team wore a jersey that was made out of like recycled bottles or something like that, and they were blue and yellow and speckled, and you couldn't read the numbers. And every team had the same kit that they wore at some point, and they were horrible.
And in the Premier League, they did with their jerseys, nothing like the colors. Like Manchester City made a jersey based off some club that was popular in the 80s when everybody was doing ecstasy. That's how crazy.
When you make a jersey that gives these a run for their money, it's a bad jersey. And I'm talking about the Philly City Connect. When people are preferring, I can't think of the word, preferring that jersey, which is the worst damn thing I've ever seen, that they wore for more than 1 year, believe it or not, over the City Connect. That's a bad jersey. That looks bad for '93.
Yeah, I remember when those came out. It was like,
so do I.
yeah.
So do I. Oh.
Well,
Even at 9 years old, I was going.
I don't even remember these uniforms.
Exactly.
That was like Charles Barkley's last year.
Yeah, Moses Malone was still there.
And then who was the guy they drafted? The Mormon, 7'6"
Sean Bradley.
Tom Bradley, I think.
Yeah.
I think they got rid of him like right before Iverson came to the league.
Yeah, by the time Iverson was in the league, they were pretty much back to the tradition.
Yeah, they went to a traditional jersey and then they went to the black and red, which I like.
They were wearing that when Iverson came in the league. I like that jersey, and I wish they would bring it back, but just use the traditional colors instead of the gold. That blue alternate they had when they had that alternate logo was one of my favorite jerseys, and that's one of two Iverson jerseys. In fact, I own two Iverson jerseys. They're both the alternates from those years, the red one and the blue one. That's funny. I just thought of that. Blue Jay City. See if there's anybody who's got a rumor. Nope. Nothing. At least they're keeping it tight, man.
That's the rumor.
Well, at this rate, they should just bring the Buffalo Bison jersey in. That could be the City Connect because they're playing about as well as a AAA team.
The one where they spelled Buffalo wrong on it? You didn't see that picture?
That one. No.
One of the players was in the game, and they left out the L in Buffalo. It said Buffalo.
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 Well, all right, as we shuffle off the Buffalo, I think it's time for us to wrap up and shuffle off the Buffalo ourselves, right? Thanks to everyone for joining us. Dan, where can our listeners follow you?
Dan Law 83 all social media.
Mark, how about you? Where can our listeners find you? And you got any trips planned for the next?
Yeah, you can find me at Ballpark Hunter on YouTube, and I'll be in Abilene, Texas, for the New York Rangers, Texas Rangers horseshoe tournament, hosted by the Flying Bison. The inside joke for WFAN listeners. No,
I was going to say that sentence made no sense to me.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. Mike Francesa got a call one time, and it led to that. So.
Mike Francesca's got to be one of the most miserable dudes I've ever seen.
Flying Bison. I'll be
never happy.
I'll be at the Indiana Fever. I know that. I just hopefully second or third game will work out because there's such a demand.
So have they moved all their games to the Farmers Coliseum? Farmers Bank? What is it called? Farmers Bank Coliseum?
Well, they've always played that game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just that they're going to open up the top. Thursday's game is sold out. Yeah, it's sold out. It's a big deal. Caitlin Clark is this whole economics. Caitlin Clark and Asia.
I saw something. I didn't read the article. Just figured it would be garbage. But comparing her impact on the WNBA to Larry Bird's impact on the NBA back in '79 when he came in.
We'll have to wait.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to wait because a lot of people are saying that. And what's her name up in Chicago? The heel.
Angel Reese.
I know the Connecticut Sun just announced they sold out their home opener coming up this week.
I was saying Angel Reese. Angel Reese. Yeah, and Angel Reese, Chicago's going to draw well too. I mean, I think they may play some games at the United Center when the Fever come up. So. Or not. And there may be some games they play there when the Fever aren't. So. Everybody's like getting excited about the WNBA. I have people missing kickball games because of it. I have some of my high school boys talking about it. Something I never would have predicted a year ago. So.
I'm kind of upset over it because the Connecticut summer always something I had to myself, and I could get tickets for $25 and go down to Mohegan Sun in Connecticut and catch a game and always be able to get a good seat. But now I'm going to have to compete with everybody, and I'm sure I'm going to have to pay a lot more. So I'm not happy about that. But I am happy, for the overall growth of the league.
Well, yeah, and
for my selfish reasons.
Yeah, well, you want the players to get paid. I mean, you don't want them to have to play overseas to make their money. You want them to make their money here, get endorsements. And unfortunately, some of the older players are spitting sour grapes right now. Hey, it is what it is.
Same thing happened to the older players in the men's sports, right?
Well, look at Babe Ruth. If you told Babe Ruth how much he would be making right now.
Yeah. He would have taken better care of himself?
He's like, I could buy another beer.
Yeah.
You could buy another hooker.
Dave, where can our listeners follow you? And do you have anything on your agenda?
Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, etc. AfroFan9. Haven't had too much recently, but junior lacrosse sort of kicks off the long weekend, which is next weekend. So I'm hoping to hit on the holiday Monday. I'm hoping to get to the Six Nations Arrows, which Six Nations is like the spot for lacrosse down here. So I've been once before, but not for the junior. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, follow that at.
And the NLL is wrapping up this week, right? You got Buffalo and Albany in the finals.
Yep, next weekend. Yeah. Can you believe that Albany made the finals?
No, I cannot. After the game you and I went to last year.
Oh, the team is so bad.
They were
awful. Game was over in the first 5 minutes.
And now they're in the finals.
Now they're in the finals. And I'm shocked that Toronto did not make the finals because they kind of dominated all year. And then, 2 games, one they really wet the bed against Buffalo. That's the way it goes.
Indeed. Let's see. And for me, you can follow my stadium journeys on Twitter and Instagram at PuckmanRI. Where am I heading? Well, it's baseball season, so that means that I am public address announcing for the brand new New England knockout of the Frontier League. We just had our opening weekend last weekend, but our season is in full swing now. So I will be in Brockton announcing either for the knockouts or for the Brockton Rocks pretty much every day this summer. So if you need me between now and Labor Day, go to Brockton. That's where I'll be. And fans, please come to Brockton. It's really it's a good time. It's very affordable. You can get a ticket for $8 as opposed to $108 up at Fenway or in
Somebody
Worcester.
Please bring Paul a milk crate to sit on.
I don't need a milk crate. I have a chair, but it's just packed into a room with 17 other chairs. Yeah, they got us packed in there because we've got me, we've got the guy doing the video board, the guy doing the music, we have a cameraman, and we have the 2 people running the webcast all in the same tiny room.
You need to go back out to center field.
It was left field, thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So, this weekend, actually, I'm thinking I've got this weekend off, so we're actually thinking of going to a baseball game somewhere. So, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. See where in the world is Carmen Sandiego. Remember, if you're looking to find the authority on stadium information, that's stadiumjourney.com, where we have over 2,500 stadium reviews, news items, and other feature stories. We passed 3,000 posts on our site this past week, so that's pretty impressive. Connect with us on our social media channels. Easy to find us at Stadium Journey. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you're looking to find the podcast, search HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you look for your favorite podcast. We'll be there too. Video simulcast, go to Stadium Journey's YouTube page. And if you want to be part of our live studio audience, Monday night, 7 Eastern, go to DML 83 and follow the directions from there. It's really a lot easier than I just made it sound. We will all be back in 2 weeks. That's Memorial Day here in the United States, May 27th. But you know what? We're professionals. We're going to work our asses off anyway and record a podcast. Well, I don't know how much work this is. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to be joined by Paul Caputo from Baseball by Design, so that should be a fun for you uniform logo geeks. Another good guest to have on the show. So, as always, thanks everyone for joining us and for your support. And thanks again to Melissa for joining us. For Dan, Mark, and Dave, this is Paul wishing you all safe stadium journeys post games.